Hello, I'm Taylor Lehman. I want to give information on what it is like to get a stem cell transplant or bone marrow transplant and share my experience in getting a transplant. So after I went through several rounds of chemo while I was pregnant, after I delivered my baby, I had my PET scan done and it turned out to be positive for cancer. There was still cancer and still a bunch of big tumors. It actually proved that my cancer was refractory, which just means that it didn't respond well to my first round of chemotherapy, and so it was worse. My prognosis was worse. So with that information, my medical team decided it was best that I received a stem cell transplant, which is the same thing as a bone marrow transplant. I had an autologus transplant, which is where I received my own stem cells. A stem cell transplant is extremely high doses of chemotherapy given, followed by previously collected stem cells that are infused back into the body. And the high dose chemo is given to eliminate the cancer. And the infusion of the stem cells replaced the bone marrow that was destroyed by the chemotherapy. In other words, they basically give you chemotherapy that is so strong that almost brings you to death that they have to give you back stem cells just to keep you alive. Alright, so with my experience with my stem cell transplant, I had to go through salvage chemotherapy after my initial chemos, and this was called rice. So it was 3 times a week, every 3 weeks, and this chemo was significantly tougher to go through than my first chemo, R-CHOP, that I went through when I was pregnant. The 3 days in a row were what really did it, I think. It was just, I felt so saturated with chemotherapy and with drugs, it was just horrible. I would go in and fall asleep because they give you Benadryl before they give it to you, and you're there for about 8 hours each day, and you wake up from your nap and you just feel like you woke up with the worst hangover of your life, and it continues to get worse. I don't even have words to describe it, but anyways, it was really rough chemo, and then it takes you about 3 weeks to get over those 3 days, and then as soon as you start to feel better, they knock you down by giving you another 3 days of that chemo. After that, I had a central line placed in up here, that because when you get chemotherapy, usually you get a port, which I had a port in my thigh, but they needed to put the central line in that went directly to my heart because it'll ruin your veins. They had 3 lines for 3 different chemos to go in at once, and it needed to be flushed every so often. And I actually had this put in a month before my stem cell transplant. My husband had to do the dressing changes on it and do the flushings of each thing every day. You also couldn't get it wet in the shower, so there was a long period of time where I had to put plastic wrap over my body and not get this shoulder or my chest in the water. I had to get daily infusions for 2 weeks with antibiotics and fluids. I had to get a Lupron shot in my butt. It's a shot that prevents you from having your period for 3 months. The reason why they give you that shot is because when you go in for your stem cell transplant, they don't want you to lose any blood at all, including going on your period, because your blood levels will go so low that they cannot risk any blood loss. I had to get a bone marrow biopsy. That was probably one of the most traumatic things that I've ever experienced. There's no other sensation like it. Literally, you lay on a table completely awake. They don't give you any twilighting. They don't put you out. You are completely awake. I think they gave me a Xanax, I don't know, some kind of anxiety medication, which did not kick in at all. Like, they gave me the pill and then they took me right back. And they almost didn't let my husband go in with me, and I think I was just being a big crybaby and told them I needed him, so they let him go in with me. I squeezed his hand off, laying there, and they literally drill a hole into the back of your hip and through your hip bone, and they get a sample of your bone marrow to make sure that it's good and healthy before they take your own bone marrow to give it back to you after the stem cell transplant. But Literally your bones are shaking and vibrating, and you hear the drilling noise going into your bone. It was just extremely unpleasant, extremely unpleasant. Also had to get Lovenox 3 to 4 times a day injected because I had a history of, I had a pulmonary embolism. So 3 of those injections that I couldn't do myself, so thank God my husband is not grossed out by that. He had to inject me 3 to 4 times a day with that. For the stem cell transplant, you need to get 3 times daily also a Neupogen shot, which stimulates your body to overproduce stem cells. So I was getting 4 shots of Lovenox and then 3 shots of Neupogen a day. So yeah, the Neupogen is a crazy drug. First of all, it's like $350 per injection. Just ridiculously expensive. And then you have to take it so often just so they want your body to overproduce the stem cells, and so that you have all the stem cells in your blood so that they can collect it out of your blood. However, there are some really unpleasant side effects of taking Neupogen because it causes like what they call bone pain, and it sounds just like that. It just feels like bruises all over your body, like everywhere you can imagine, everywhere, all over your body. It feels like bruises. I remember sleeping and I could not get comfortable because it felt like my face was bruised, like I was punched in the face all over, just bruises. It didn't look like bruises, but it just felt like bruises. After that, after 2 weeks of getting injected with the Neupogen, you have to go through a thing called apheresis. So that's where you go in and they connect you to this big machine while you lay down for hours, and they filter your blood, kind of like a dialysis thing. But what they do is, so your blood goes through this machine, and while it's going through, it takes out all those extra stem cells that your body just created from the Neupogen, and it takes those. Then the doctors take that and freeze them for after your stem cell transplant, because you're going to get your own stem cells back after you get all that chemo and after your transplant. So that's the purpose of that. Usually it takes like 4 days of the apheresis to harvest as many stem cells as they need. October 1st, 2016 is the day that I was admitted into the hospital onto the bone marrow transplant floor. You can never leave for your entire stay, and it's about a month stay. You literally just can't leave the floor. You can walk down the hall and that's it. They're very strict with the visitors. You can have visitors. It's actually open 24/7 for visitors. But because everyone's immune system is so low on this floor, you can absolutely have no hint of illness when you come in. They encourage people to wear the hospital mask. So what a stem cell transplant basically is, for me, it was 8 days of straight chemotherapy, literally 8 days back to back. As soon as I got there, they started my first chemo the first day. The first chemo that I received was busulfan, and it was 4 days in a row. They want to hit that chemo so hard that they are gonna truly kill almost everything in your body just to kill that tumor, that cancer. So yeah, busulfan 4 days in a row. Then I had etoposide 2 days in a row, and that was a 48-hour drip. Literally 48 hours of straight etoposide, and even just saying that word makes me want to gag, because that is the worst drug that I've ever been given. Poison, like, it was just disgusting. Literally, constantly, every time one bag would run out, the nurse would come back in and hang another bag up, and that was just the most disgusting chemo ever. That was just horrible. The next one was cyclophosphamide, and that was 2 days in a row after the etoposide. They give you a day of rest after all that chemotherapy, and then they give you the stem cells from the apheresis back into your body to bring you back up. Because after all that chemotherapy, your blood cells are your body is just so low. Truly, it's like you are at death, and they have to bring you back alive by giving you those stem cells. So let me tell you some side effects of that stem cell transplant chemotherapy that I had. By like the 3rd day, I was vomiting, and I think while I was getting the etoposide, which was like the strongest one that I had the hardest time with, I was vomiting so much, and it was so much pressure. Like, it was different throwing up than I've ever had before. I remember after I threw up, I just felt all this pressure in my face, came back up, my eyes were red, like fire engine red, completely bloodshot. I had lots of anxiety and panic attacks, and not just because I was nervous. Of course I was nervous, but these anxiety attacks were not brought on from nervousness. It was like an automatic response from my body. It was an anxiety or a panic attack like I've never felt before. All of a sudden, like, I literally could not settle my own body down. There's nothing I could think of. It just happened. A few times I had those, and that was really scary. Extreme fatigue. I slept a lot. Dehydration. I was so thirsty. Probably the worst, definitely the worst side effect that I had from my stem cell transplant was mucositis. Mucositis is inflammation of your mucous membranes all the way from your mouth to your bottom. You get sores all over your mouth. You literally cannot eat. You can't eat anything. Your throat, it is probably like strep throat times 1,000. I could not even drink water. I literally could not have a sip of water. I could not eat any food. I lost a lot of weight. I could not eat anything. They tried to give me like these little protein shakes, these Ensures, and I could not drink them. It was just so painful. And even if you weren't drinking or eating, it still was just pain that just radiated in your mouth, in your throat. It was bad. They had me on lots of pain medications. They had given me oxycodone and fentanyl. I was on a fentanyl drip, a constant fentanyl drip. Plus, they gave me a button to get boosts every 30 minutes, and that still was not enough. It was really bad. Disorientation. Like, with this experience, I did not feel like myself at all. I mean, literally, think of 8 days straight of this poison. Like, I was just not myself. I felt different. I felt like I was outside of my body. I remember waking up one time, and I felt like the room was just like, it was like a scary movie. Like, it was just where the hallway doesn't end. That's how I felt like my room was. I had some crazy fevers while I was in the hospital. My temperature would go from, in the middle of the night especially, from like 101 degrees to 104 degrees. And it would feel like I was dying. I remember there was one night specifically that was harder than all the others. And I called my nurse in, and I told her I thought that I was dying. I felt so hot that I was just going to burn to death. And, yeah, that was just, that was hard. I felt so horrible throughout this month in the hospital and so sick that I didn't really like to have visitors because I just wanted to rest, and, I just didn't feel up to it. But I did have some visitors. First of all, my husband stayed with me every single night. I think there was only one night that he went home with the kids just because our kids missed us. But he stayed with me every single night in the hospital. And he didn't have a bed. He literally sat in a chair next to me every single night. And he's just this big man sitting in this little chair, sleeping in this little chair, getting no sleep because every couple hours a nurse comes in for vitals. So I can't believe he did that for me, but thank God he stayed with me because I don't know how I would do it by myself. It was awesome having him there. While we were in the hospital, my mother and father-in-law watched my 3 children for me. She was 2, 1, and 6 months. That's how old they were at the time. So they watched them for me for 31 days. Every single day they took care of them, and I just think that's crazy they did that for me. So thankful for them. But they came up and visited me 2 times, and I'm sure they would have came up more, but like I said, I just it was bad. It was just really horrible feeling. Even though I wanted to see him so bad, I was not up for it. But they did come 2 times, which was really nice. It was so sad. It was the hardest thing ever when they would leave the hospital, because I mean those are my babies. Just wanted to be with them. I mean, I can't believe that I was away from them for a whole month. That's so unnatural. Right, so yeah, meanwhile, during the stem cell transplant, they check your blood levels every single day to see where you are, and your white blood cells and your neutrophils go down so low to 0. And based on how low you go, they give you blood. And so I had to get some blood transfusions, and I think that my white blood cells went down to a 0.03 or something ridiculously low, which is just so scary because, I mean, white blood cells are usually 4 point something. That's the lowest average, like 4 point something to 11, and I was at like 0.03. So yeah, it's just scary because, I mean, if you're exposed to any illness, you're gonna catch it because you don't have your body doesn't have anything to defend itself with. So yeah, I had to get some blood, which brought my blood levels up a little bit. And then after, I forget how many days, it was like 12 days or so, finally the stem cells my own stem cells that they gave back to me kicked in, and my blood levels started to rise. That's what the purpose of those stem cells are, is to bring your body back up to life and bring all your blood levels back to normal. So with my blood levels being so low, I did acquire 2 infections in the hospital. I got VRE, which is just an infection, and another digestive infection. And they were very painful infections because I still had that mucositis where I couldn't eat or drink. And with the mucositis, it hurts to go to go number 2 also, because it's a mucus tract, mucous membranes. And those infections just made it 10 times worse. After 31 days, when my blood levels slowly started to get back to normal, I checked out of the hospital. I went home, continuing IV antibiotics that were given to me through my port, that my husband could administer me, and I also had a home care nurse come by every so often to check on me. Let me think. It took 3 months to even feel a little bit better, and I don't mean better, like a little bit better. Like it felt like when I went home, I truly did feel worse than I did leaving the hospital, because when I left the hospital, I was still on my fentanyl drip, and they did give me some pain medicine to take when I got home, but I mean, nothing could make it feel better. I mean, it was just miserable. I have no other way to explain it. I mean, a hangover does not do it justice. Like, a hangover times 1,000 every single day. So yeah, after about 3 months, I just started to feel a little bit better. And they say it takes 2 years to completely heal from a stem cell transplant. They say the fatigue lasts for 2 years. For me, it's been 1.5 years, so I haven't even hit my 2 years yet. After your stem cell transplant, you have to get all of your vaccinations again, like a brand new baby, because your immune system was completely wiped out, completely started from scratch, because they killed everything. My hair didn't grow back for 3 months. That was kind of crazy, like 3 full months of being completely bald. And I was more bald than I was with my previous chemotherapies, obviously, because this chemo was just so much stronger. No head hair, of course. I had no eyebrows or eyelashes. I remember looking into the mirror, zero eyebrows, completely bald eyebrows. And my eyelashes, I could count on one hand my eyelashes. Like, literally I could see like 1, 2, 3 hairs. That was it. No eyelashes, just, it was really sad. I mean, I'm a pretty confident person, but that really, losing all your hair really does something. Like, it really changes, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say that's the hardest part. The hardest part is probably missing my children. But, I mean, that is just really something you have to learn to deal with having no hair. Because, I don't know. It's just sad. Thank God I have a husband who was just extremely supportive to me and just made me feel like I was more beautiful than ever. The entire time that I was going through cancer treatment, he had his head shaved to support me. But, yeah, no, that was extremely tough, having no hair. So I am just so thankful for the hair that I have now. I'm thankful for leg hair and armpit hair and everything. Eyebrows, like, I'm just so thankful for any hair, because that was one of the hardest things ever. So yeah, that was my experience with my stem cell transplant. Thank you so much for listening. I know these videos are really long. I'm going to try to make them shorter. I just want to make sure I put every detail into them of what happened. After my stem cell transplant, I got a PET scan probably 3 months later, and it was positive for cancer still. So I had to go through more treatment, and I went through radiation, and I will make another video sometime about that. Alright, well, if you're interested in more of my story, you can subscribe, and I will post more videos, and hopefully I can get some other kind of things in these videos too, maybe more family fun and stuff like that. But thank you again for watching.
Thank you for watching Mommy's video. Please subscribe.